Welcome to Hercule Mysteries, unraveling the genius of Hercule Poirot.
A luxurious yacht glides through the misty waters of the English Channel, its decks alive with the clink of champagne glasses and the laughter of England's elite. But beneath the glittering surface, a dark secret festers. A scream pierces the night. A bloodstain gleams on the polished teak. Beside a gold cufflink engraved with the host's initials. Where did the blood come from? Who left it there? And why is there no body? Chapter 1. The Invitation to the Sapphire Yacht. The late summer sun cast a golden sheen across the calm waters of the English Channel, where the Sapphire Yacht lay anchored off the coast of Devon. The vessel, a gleaming monument to opulence, belonged to Sir Reginald Ashbourne, a shipping magnate whose fortune was whispered to rival that of royalty. Its polished teak decks and towering white masts stood in proud defiance of the modest fishing boats bobbing nearby. Tonight, the yacht was not merely a ship, but a stage, set for a weekend of revelry among a select circle of England's elite. Yet beneath the clink of champagne glasses and the murmur of polite laughter, a shadow of unease stirred, as if the sea itself sensed the storm to come. Captain Arthur Hastings, recently returned from a sojourn in London, stood at the yacht's railing, his military bearing softened by the warmth of the evening. He adjusted his tie, feeling faintly out of place among the glittering assembly. Sir Reginald had invited him at the last moment, a gesture Hastings suspected was more about filling a seat than genuine camaraderie. Still, the prospect of a weekend at sea, with fine food and finer company, was not one to decline lightly. He scanned the deck, noting the guests, a constellation of wealth, ambition, and secrets. Sir Reginald himself, a broad-shouldered man in his late 50s with a ruddy complexion and a booming laugh, held court near the grand piano. His wife, Lady Beatrice Ashbourne, moved with the grace of a swan, her emerald gown catching the light as she greeted each guest. Her smile, Hastings observed, was a touch too fixed, her eyes darting as if searching for something, or someone. Their daughter, Miss Eleanor Ashbourne, a striking young woman of 23, leaned against a pillar, her auburn hair glowing under the lanterns. She seemed bored, her gaze flitting to the horizon as if longing to escape. Nearby, Dr. Maurice Caldwell, a physician of some renown, sipped his drink with a distracted air. His wife, Mrs. Clara Caldwell, clung to his arm, her nervous laughter betraying a tension Hastings couldn't quite place. Then there was Mr. Victor Langston, a financier whose sharp features and sharper tongue had earned him both fortune and enemies. His companion, Miss Sylvia Grey, a stage actress with a cascade of blonde curls, drew admiring glances from the men, and Margaret Hartley, whose plain attire contrasted sharply with the yacht's grandeur. Hastings's musings were interrupted by the arrival of a late guest, announced with a flourish by the yacht's steward. "Monsieur Hercule Poirot!" The name sent a ripple through the gathering. Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective, stepped onto the deck with the precision of a metronome. His patent leather shoes gleamed, his moustache was a work of art, and his green eyes sparkled with quiet amusement. Hastings hurried to greet him, relieved to see a familiar face. "Poirot, my dear fellow!" Hastings exclaimed. "What brings you here? I thought you were in London, buried in your books and tisanes." Poirot inclined his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Mon ami, even Hercule Poirot requires, from time to time, the refreshment of the sea air. Sir Reginald was kind enough to extend an invitation, and I, intrigued by the company, accepted. But tell me, Hastings, what is your impression of this ménage?" Hastings glanced at the guests, now resuming their conversations. "A lively bunch, I suppose?" Wealthy, influential, and, well, a bit tense, if I'm honest. There's something in the air, Poirot. I can't put my finger on it. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Tension, you say? Bien. The air is often heavy before a storm. Let us observe, Hastings, and see what secrets this yacht holds. The evening progressed with the elegance expected of such an occasion. Dinner was served in the yacht's dining salon, a room of mahogany and crystal where candlelight danced on the walls. Sir Reginald presided at the head of the table, regaling the guests with tales of his latest ventures in the Far East. Lady Beatrice, seated opposite, maintained her poised smile, though Hastings noticed her fingers tighten around her wineglass when her husband mentioned a recent business rival. Eleanor, to her father's left, toyed with her food, her expression distant. Dr. Caldwell spoke little, his attention fixed on his plate, while Mrs. Caldwell chattered nervously about the London season. Langston, ever the cynic, made barbed remarks about the stock market, earning a sharp glance from Colonel Hartley. Miss Grey, meanwhile, captivated the table with stories of her theatrical triumphs, her laughter like a bell. As the dessert course, poached pears in a delicate brandy sauce, was served, Sir Reginald rose, glass in hand. "My friends," he began, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "this weekend is not merely a pleasure cruise. I have an announcement to make, one that will, I trust, surprise and delight you all." He paused, his eyes sweeping the table, widened with curiosity. Dr. Caldwell exchanged a glance with his wife, and Colonel Hartley cleared his throat as if to dispel the sudden tension. Miss Margaret Hartley, silent throughout the meal, stared at her brother with an unreadable expression. "What sort of venture, Sir Reginald?" Langston asked, his tone edged with skepticism. Sir Reginald chuckled. "Patience, my dear Langston. All will be revealed tomorrow. For now, let us enjoy the evening." The party dispersed to the deck for coffee and liqueurs, the night air cool against the warmth of the salon. Hastings, standing beside Poirot, felt a prickle of unease. "What do you make of that, Poirot? A big announcement, and everyone looking like they've swallowed a lemon." Poirot sipped his tisane, his eyes fixed on the guests. "Sir Reginald, he plays a dangerous game, Hastings. To announce a secret is to invite curiosity and perhaps fear. Each person here, they have their own reasons to wonder what he means, and where there is wonder, there is often danger." The night deepened, the yacht's lights casting a soft glow on the water. The guests mingled, their laughter growing strained as the hours passed. At precisely 10:47 p.m., as recorded by the ship's clock, a sharp cry pierced the air. It came from the stern, where Lady Beatrice stood alone, her hand pressed to her mouth. The guests rushed to her side, Hastings and Poirot among them. "What is it, my dear?" Sir Reginald demanded, his face pale. Lady Beatrice pointed to the deck, where a small object glinted in the lantern light. It was a gold cufflink, engraved with the initials R.A., Sir Reginald's own. But what drew every eye was the dark stain beside it, a smear of crimson that glistened wetly against the polished wood. "Blood," Dr. Caldwell said, his voice steady but grim. He knelt to examine the stain, then looked up, his expression grave. "Fresh blood." A gasp rippled through the group. Sir Reginald's face hardened. "Nonsense. Someone's spilled wine, that's all. Let's not be dramatic." But Poirot, kneeling beside the stain, shook his head. "This is not wine, Sir Reginald. This is blood. And it is, as the good doctor says, fresh. We must ascertain its source. Immediatement." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier mirth forgotten. Hastings felt a chill that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. The sapphire yacht, so elegant and serene, had become a stage for something far darker. And Hercule Poirot, with his sharp eyes and sharper mind, was already at work, his little gray cells stirring to unravel the mystery that had only just begun.
Sir Reginald Ashburn's initials lay beside it, like an accusation. Hercule Poirot, his small frame crouched near the stain, examined it with the precision of a jeweller inspecting a flawed diamond. Captain Hastings stood at his side, his heart pounding as the implications of the discovery sank in. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, his gloved finger hovering just above the blood. "This is no accident, Hastings. Blood does not appear on a deck so pristine without reason. And this cufflink, très intéressant. It belongs to our host, does it not?" Sir Reginald, his face flushed with a mixture of indignation and unease, stepped forward. "Of course it's mine," he snapped. "Must have dropped it earlier. As for the blood, it's probably nothing. A crewman's cut, a clumsy guest. Let's not make a mountain out of a molehill." Lady Beatrice, still pale from her cry, clutched her husband's arm. "Reginald, don't be foolish. That's no small amount of blood. We must search the yacht at once." Poirot rose, brushing imaginary dust from his immaculate suit. "Madam, you are correct. A search is imperative. But first, we must account for all present. Where is every guest, every crew member, at this precise moment?" The steward, a wiry man named Jenkins, stepped forward, his face ashen. "I'll muster the crew, sir. There are 10 of us aboard, including myself. I'll have them here in a moment." "And the guests," Poirot said, his green eyes sweeping the group. "Let us confirm that all are accounted for. Hastings, if you please, a roll call." Hastings, ever eager to be useful, cleared his throat. "Right, then. Sir Reginald and Lady Beatrice Ashburn, Miss Eleanor Ashburn, Dr. Maurice Caldwell, Mrs. Clara Caldwell, Mr. Victor Langston, Miss Sylvia Grey, Colonel Rupert Hartley, Miss Margaret Hartley, and, well, myself and Poirot, of course." The guests nodded or murmured their presence, though their eyes darted nervously. Jenkins returned with the crew, 7 deckhands, a cook, and an engineer, all of whom confirmed their whereabouts during the evening. Most had been below decks, preparing for the night's duties, though one deckhand, a young man named Tompkins, admitted to being near the stern at 10:30 p.m., cleaning the railings. "Didn't see nothing odd, sir," he said, his voice trembling under Poirot's gaze. "Bon," Poirot said. "Now, we search for the source of this blood. Sir Reginald, you will accompany us, n'est-ce pas? The cufflink suggests a connection to you." Sir Reginald bristled, but nodded. "Fine. Let's get this nonsense over with." The search began methodically, with Poirot directing the guests to remain on the main deck under Jenkins's supervision. He, Hastings, with article. Yet now, every shadow seemed to conceal a threat. They began at the stern, where the blood had been found. The area was clear save for the stain and cufflink, which Poirot had instructed be left undisturbed. From there they moved to the upper deck, then to the cabins. Each guest's room was inspected, though Poirot's keen eyes lingered on small details: a misaligned rug in Langston's cabin, a faint smudge on Eleanor's mirror. Nothing, however, suggested violence. It was in the master suite, Sir Reginald and Lady Beatrice's private quarters, that the search took a grim turn. The room was a study in extravagance, with silk drapes and a 4-poster bed. But on the floor, near the dressing table, lay a small pool of blood, its edges already drying. Beside it was a crumpled handkerchief, monogrammed with the same R.A. as the cufflink.
Good Lord, Hastings whispered. More blood. Dr. Caldwell knelt, his face grim. This is recent, within the last hour, I'd wager. And it's human, no question. Sir Reginald's face drained of color. This is absurd. I was on deck all evening. You all saw me. Poirot's mustache twitched. Précisément, Sir Reginald. You were seen. Until you were not. Tell me, when did you last visit this room? Before dinner, Sir Reginald said, his voice faltering. I changed my jacket. Left my cufflinks on the table, I think. But I swear, I've not been back since. Poirot's eyes gleamed. And yet, your cufflink is on the deck, and blood is here. We must find the source. Immediatement. The search intensified. The crew scoured the lower decks, while Poirot and Hastings checked the lifeboats and storage areas. It was Tompkins, the young deckhand, who raised the alarm from the starboard side. "Here, sir!" he shouted, pointing to the railing. A smear of blood trailed over the edge, as if something, or someone, had been dragged. Poirot leaned over, his eyes scanning the dark water below. "Mon ami, this is no longer a question of a minor injury. We must face the possibility of a crime. Sir Reginald, where were you between 10:30 and 10:47 p.m. when the cry was heard?" Sir Reginald's jaw tightened. "I was with the guests, mingling. Ask anyone." "And yet," Poirot said softly, "no one can account for every moment. We must question all, Hastings. A crime has occurred, and the Sapphire Yacht is our stage." The guests were summoned to the dining salon, where Poirot took charge with his usual calm authority. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear, and she was in her cabin, reading. Though no one could confirm it, Dr. Caldwell had been in the lounge, discussing medicine with Colonel Hartley, while Mrs. Caldwell insisted she was with her husband, though her eyes darted nervously. Langston claimed to have been smoking on the upper deck, alone. Miss Grey said she was with Lady Beatrice, but her timeline was vague. Colonel Hartley corroborated Dr. Caldwell's story, while Miss Margaret Hartley said she had been in her cabin, resting. Poirot listened, his head tilted, his fingers steepled. "Intéressant. Each of you has an alibi, yet none is ironclad. And where, I ask, is the source of this blood? We must search again, and we must think. The little grey cells, they are already at work." As the guests dispersed, uneasy and whispering, Hastings pulled Poirot aside. "What do you make of it, Poirot? It's all so dashed confusing. Blood, a cufflink, but no body. Could it be a prank?" Poirot's eyes were grave. "A prank, Hastings? No. Blood does not flow for amusement. There is a crime here, and I fear it is not yet complete. We must watch, and we must listen. The Sapphire Yacht holds its secrets tightly, but Hercule Poirot will unravel them." The night wore on, the yacht rocking gently on the waves. The guests retired to their cabins, their faces pale, their conversations hushed. Hastings lay awake, the image of the blood seared into his mind. Poirot, he knew, was not sleeping. Somewhere in the darkness, the little Belgian was pacing, his mind turning over every detail, every glance, every lie. The Sapphire Yacht had become a floating puzzle, and the next piece was yet to fall. Chapter 3. The Arrival of Hercule Poirot. The Sapphire Yacht lay cloaked in the uneasy hush of dawn, its gleaming decks now shadowed by the events of the previous night.
The bloodstains, both on the stern and in Sir Reginald Ashburn's cabin, had cast a pall over the guests, their earlier gaiety replaced by a brittle tension. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the railing, watched the first rays of sunlight ripple across the channel, his mind restless with questions. The gold cufflink, the smears of blood, and the absence of a body formed a puzzle that seemed to defy reason. Yet he knew that for his friend, Hercule Poirot, such mysteries were merely a challenge to his formidable intellect. Poirot had not joined the guests for breakfast, a fact that did not surprise Hastings. The little Belgian detective was likely already at work, his little grey cells sifting through the fragments of the night's discoveries. Hastings, however, felt compelled to mingle.
Their whispers barely audible. Victor Langston, the financier, read a newspaper with studied indifference, though his eyes flicked up occasionally to scan the room. Miss Sylvia Grey, the actress, applied lipstick with a trembling hand, while Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister, Margaret, ate in silence, their faces etched with unease. It was at precisely 8:47 a.m., as noted by the ship's clock, that Poirot made his entrance. He stepped into the salon with the air of a conductor about to lead an orchestra, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache immaculate. The guests turned as one, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs," Poirot said, his voice clear and measured. "I trust you have slept, though perhaps not well. The events of last night, they are troubling, n'est-ce pas? But fear not. Hercule Poirot is here to bring order to this chaos." Sir Reginald, seated at the head of the table, set down his coffee cup with a clatter. "Poirot, this is all nonsense. A bit of blood, a lost cufflink, hardly a case for a detective of your reputation. I say we let the crew clean it up and enjoy our weekend." Poirot's eyes twinkled with something akin to amusement. "Monsieur, a bit of blood is never nothing. It is a story written in crimson, and I intend to read it. But first, I must understand the players in this drama. You will permit me to ask questions, oui?" Sir Reginald's jaw tightened, but he nodded. "Very well. Ask away, but don't expect much. We're all respectable people here." "Respectable," Poirot repeated softly, as if savouring the word. "A most interesting adjective. Let us begin." Poirot took a seat, his small frame commanding the room's attention. Hastings, standing near the door, marvelled at how the detective's presence transformed the atmosphere. The guests, so confident the night before, now seemed diminished, their secrets hovering like shadows. "Monsieur Langston," Poirot began, turning to the financier, "you were smoking on the upper deck at 10:30 p.m., you say. Did you see anyone near the stern, perhaps near where the blood was found?" Langston folded his newspaper, his sharp features unyielding. "I saw no one. I was alone, enjoying a cigar. The stern was out of my view." "Intéressant," Poirot said, his fingers steepled. "And you, Mademoiselle Grey? You were with Lady Beatrice, oui? What did you discuss?" Sylvia Grey's smile was brittle, her eyes darting to Lady Beatrice. "Oh, just idle chatter. Fashion, the theatre. Nothing important." Lady Beatrice nodded, though her hands twisted in her lap. "Yes, Sylvia was with me. We were on the main deck, near the piano." Poirot's gaze shifted to Eleanor Ashbourne. "Mademoiselle Eleanor, you were in your as she shook her head. "Nothing. I was lost in my book. The walls are thick, you know." "Vraiment," Poirot murmured. "And you, Dr. Caldwell?" "You and Colonel Hartley discussed medicine. A fascinating topic, no doubt. Where precisely were you at 10:30 p.m.? Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. "In the lounge, near the bar. Colonel Hartley can confirm it." Colonel Hartley nodded gruffly. "That's right. We were debating the merits of modern surgery. Dull stuff to most, I imagine." Poirot's eyes lingered on Mrs. Caldwell, whose nervous fingers plucked at her napkin.
Madame, you were with your husband, oui? Did you perhaps step away for a moment? Mrs. Caldwell flushed. I may have gone to the powder room briefly, but I was back quickly. I saw nothing unusual. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. And you, Mademoiselle Margaret Hartley? You were resting in your cabin. Did you by chance hear or see anything that might assist us? Margaret Hartley, her plain face composed, shook her head. I was asleep, Monsieur Poirot. I'm afraid I'm of no help. The questioning continued, each alibi probed with Poirot's unrelenting precision. Hastings noted the detective's method. He asked not only for facts, but for impressions, gestures, and fleeting glances. It was as if he were assembling a mosaic, each piece seemingly trivial, yet essential. After the interviews, Poirot requested a private word with Sir Reginald and Lady Beatrice in the master suite. Hastings accompanied them, noting the tension in Sir Reginald's broad shoulders and the faint tremor in Lady Beatrice's hands. The bloodstain on the cabin floor had been cleaned by the crew, but Poirot's eyes lingered on the spot where it had been. Sir Reginald, Poirot said, this cufflink of yours found on the deck, it is one of a pair, oui? Where is the other? Sir Reginald frowned, reaching for his cuffs. To his evident surprise, only one cufflink remained. I must have lost it. I hadn't noticed. Curieux, Poirot said. And this handkerchief, also monogrammed, found with the blood. It is yours? Sir Reginald nodded reluctantly. Yes, but I keep several in my drawer. Anyone could have taken it. Lady Beatrice's voice was sharp. Reginald, this is absurd. Why would anyone take your things? This is some dreadful mistake. Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. Madam, mistakes do not bleed. We must consider all possibilities. Tell me, what was the nature of this venture Sir Reginald planned to announce? Sir Reginald's face darkened. I told you, Poirot, it's business. A new shipping route to the Americas. Profitable, but hardly
areas. Poirot examined the stern railing again, noting the blood smear's direction, outward, toward the sea. He inspected the lifeboats, finding one with a faintly damp rope, as if recently handled. In the engine room, he questioned the engineer, who confirmed all was in order, but admitted to hearing a faint thud around 10:40 p.m., which he dismissed as cargo shifting. By noon, the guests were restless, their polite facades crumbling. Whispers of mutiny against Poirot's investigation circulated, but his authority held firm. He gathered them in the salon once more, his expression grave. Mes amis, he said, the facts are these. Blood in 2 places, a cufflink, a handkerchief, and no body. Yet I believe a crime has been committed. Someone aboard this yacht knows more than they say. I urge you to speak now, before the truth is forced into the light. A heavy silence followed. Eleanor's eyes flickered to her mother, while Langston's lips curled in a faint sneer. Mrs. Caldwell clutched her husband's arm, and Miss Gray's hand trembled on her glass. No one spoke. Très bien, Poirot said. Then we continue. The truth, it cannot hide from Hercule Poirot. As the guests dispersed, Hastings caught Poirot's arm. What now, old chap? No body, no weapon, just blood and a lot of nervous people. Poirot's smile was faint but confident. Patience, Hastings. The absence of a body is itself a clue. We are on a yacht, surrounded by water. Where does one hide a crime? In plain sight, or in the depths? We shall find out. The sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets locked within its polished walls, and Poirot's mind, like a compass, pointed unerringly toward the truth. Chapter 4. The questions deepen. The sapphire yacht glided through the placid waters of the English Channel, its elegance a stark contrast to the growing unease that permeated its decks. The morning's interrogations had left the guests on edge, their polite masks slipping to reveal flickers of fear, suspicion, and defiance. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a picture of calm, his meticulous nature undeterred by the absence of a body or a clear crime. Captain Arthur Hastings followed his friend as they moved through the yacht, Poirot's sharp eyes missing nothing, his mind weaving a tapestry from the threads of last night's mystery. The dining salon, where the guests had gathered for lunch, was a study in strained civility. The clatter of silverware was muted, the conversation stilted. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, seated at the head of the table, glowered at his plate, his earlier bluster subdued. Lady Beatrice, her hands folded tightly in her lap, cast anxious glances at her daughter, Eleanor, who stared out the porthole with a distant expression. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara spoke in low tones.
Colonel Rupert Hartley, whose sister, Margaret, sat in her usual silence, her eyes darting between the guests. Poirot entered the salon at precisely 1:12 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, his presence commanding attention. He declined a seat, instead pacing slowly along the table's edge, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice as precise as a metronome. "The events of last night demand our attention. Blood has been found, a cufflink and handkerchief belonging to Sir Reginald. Yet no victim. This is not a puzzle to be dismissed. Hercule Poirot does not believe in coincidence. I shall question each of you further, and I ask for your candor. The truth it hides, but not for long." A murmur of discontent rippled through the group. Langston set down his fork with a clink. "This is absurd, Poirot. You're turning a weekend jaunt into a witch hunt. What proof do you have of any crime?" Poirot's moustache twitched. "Monsieur Langston, proof is what I seek. Blood does not appear without cause, nor does a cufflink leap from its owner's sleeve. Let us begin with you. You say you were alone, smoking, at 10:30 p.m., yet no one saw you. Can you recall any detail, perhaps a sound, a movement, that might assist us?" Langston's eyes narrowed. "I told you I was on the upper deck. I heard the usual ship noises, waves, the creak of the mast. Nothing out of the ordinary." "Vraiment?" Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild. "And you, Mademoiselle Grey, you were with Lady Beatrice, discussing fashion. Did you, perhaps, notice Sir Reginald's movements during this time?" Sylvia Grey's fingers toyed with her necklace, her smile faltering. I don't recall exactly. Lady Beatrice and I were near the piano, as I said. Sir Reginald was mingling, I suppose." "I wasn't watching him." Lady Beatrice nodded quickly. "Yes, Sylvia's right. We were together. Reginald was moving about, talking to guests. I didn't see anything unusual." Poirot's gaze shifted to Eleanor Ashbourne, whose auburn hair gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the porthole. "Mademoiselle Eleanor, you were in your cabin, reading. A quiet evening, oui? Yet the walls, as you say, are thick. Did you, perhaps, leave your cabin at any point?" Eleanor's eyes met Poirot's, steady but guarded. "No, I stayed in my room until I heard Mother's cry. I was reading Wuthering Heights. I lost track of time." "Intéressant," Poirot murmured. "A novel of passion and tragedy. Most absorbing. And you, Dr. Caldwell? You were in the lounge with Colonel Hartley. Did you notice any guests absent during—"
Trembling added, "I was with Maurice, except for a moment when I went to the powder room. I didn't see anything." Poirot turned to Margaret Hartley, whose plain face betrayed no emotion. "Mademoiselle Margaret, you were resting. Yet you are observant, no? Did you hear anything? A footstep, a voice, before you slept?" Margaret's eyes flickered to her brother, then back to Poirot. "I heard nothing, monsieur. I was asleep by 10. The questioning continued, each guest's alibi probed with Poirot's relentless precision. Hastings, standing near the door, noted the subtle shifts in posture, the fleeting glances that betrayed unease. Poirot's method was not merely to gather facts, but to unsettle, to watch for the crack in the facade that might reveal a truth. After lunch, Poirot requested a private tour of the yacht's less public areas, accompanied by Hastings, Sir Reginald, and the steward, Jenkins. They began in the crew's quarters, where Poirot examined lockers and bunks with meticulous care. In one locker, belonging to the deckhand Tompkins, he found a pair of gloves with a faint reddish stain. "Curieux," Poirot said, holding them to the light. "These must be tested. Jenkins, ensure they are preserved." Tompkins, summoned, turned pale. "Those are mine, sir, but I swear that's just rust from the railings. I was cleaning them last night." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Perhaps, Monsieur Tompkins. But rust and blood, they tell different stories. We shall see." Next, they inspected the engine room, where the engineer confirmed the thud he'd heard at 10:40 p.m. Poirot examined the machinery, noting a small toolbox with a dented lid. "This dent," he said, "it is recent. And the tools inside, are they all accounted for?" The engineer frowned, checking the box. "Seems so, sir. But I don't always check every tool." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. They moved to the storage hold, where crates of supplies were stacked. One crate, slightly askew, caught Poirot's eye. He directed Jenkins to open it, revealing bottles of wine and, tucked beneath, a folded tarpaulin with a dark stain. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, kneeling to inspect it. "Another stain. Blood, perhaps, or something else. This too must be tested." Sir Reginald, growing impatient, snapped, "This is ridiculous, Poirot. You're finding mysteries in every corner. That could be spilled wine, for heaven's sake." Poirot's smile was faint. "Monsieur, wine does not smear like blood, nor does it carry the weight of guilt. We must be thorough." As they returned to the main deck, Poirot paused at the stern, where the original bloodstain remained. He examined the railing again, noting a faint scratch in the paint, as if something heavy had been dragged across.
Wore on, with Poirot conducting private interviews in the library, a small room lined with leather-bound books. He spoke to each guest individually, probing not only their movements but their relationships with Sir Reginald. Lady Beatrice admitted to a recent argument with her husband over his business ventures, though she insisted it was trivial. Eleanor revealed that her father's new venture might affect her inheritance, a fact that made her visibly tense. Dr. Caldwell spoke vaguely of a professional disagreement with Sir Reginald, while Mrs. Caldwell hinted at financial strain. Langston admitted to a failed deal with Sir Reginald, his tone bitter. Miss Grey, tearful, confessed to a flirtation with Sir Reginald, though she swore it was innocent. Colonel Hartley and his sister offered little, their answers curt and guarded. As evening approached, Poirot gathered the guests in the salon once more. "Mes amis," he said, "the picture becomes clearer, yet murkier. Each of you has a connection to Sir Reginald, some of money, some of heart, some of resentment. The blood, the cufflink, the handkerchief, they point to a crime, but the crime itself eludes us. I ask again, if you know something, speak now." No one did. The silence was heavy, broken only by the creak of the yacht and the distant lap of waves. Hastings, watching Poirot, saw the spark in his friend's eyes, the sign that the little grey cells were at work, piecing together a truth that was still hidden from all but Poirot himself. Chapter 5. The Red Herrings. The Sapphire yacht sailed on through the late afternoon, its polished exterior belying the growing unease that coiled within its walls. The guests, once so eager to revel in the luxury of Sir Reginald Ashbourne's floating palace, now moved with the wariness of hunted creatures, their glances sharp and their voices hushed. The bloodstains, the cufflink, and the mysterious tarpaulin had woven a web of suspicion, and Hercule Poirot, with his unerring precision, was at its center, patiently untangling the threads. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, followed his friend's lead, though the complexity of the mystery left him grasping for clarity. The dining salon, where the guests had gathered for tea, was a scene of forced civility. The clink of porcelain and the soft murmur of conversation could not mask the tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud. Sir Reginald, his ruddy face set in a scowl, sat at the head of the table, his earlier bravado replaced by a defensive edge. Lady Beatrice, her hands trembling slightly, poured tea with mechanical grace, while Eleanor Ashbourne toyed with a scone, her eyes distant. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara exchanged furtive glances, their whispers barely audible. Victor Langston, the financier, maintained his air of cool detachment, though his fingers drummed lightly on the table. Miss Sylvia Grey,
Colonel Rupert Hartley, whose sister Margaret sat in her customary silence, her plain face a mask of quiet observation. Poirot entered the salon at 4:23 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, his small frame radiating authority. He declined tea, instead pacing slowly along the table, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "we are faced with a puzzle most perplexing. Blood in two places, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a stained tarpaulin, yet no victim. The facts, they point to a crime, but the crime, it plays hide and seek. Today we must look beyond the obvious, for it is in the shadows that the truth often lies." A murmur of unease rippled through the group. Langston leaned back, his sharp eyes narrowing. "You're chasing phantoms, Poirot." "No body, no crime. Perhaps someone cut themselves and dropped the cufflink. Why all this fuss?" Poirot's moustache twitched, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Monsieur Langston, you are quick to dismiss, but Hercule Poirot does not chase phantoms. The obvious, it is often a distraction, a red herring, oui? Let us test this theory." The detective's words seemed to ignite a spark of suspicion, and all eyes turned to the steward, Jenkins, who had entered with a fresh pot of tea. Jenkins, a wiry man with a nervous demeanour, froze under the scrutiny. "Sir," he said, his voice faltering. Poirot turned to him, his gaze piercing. "Monsieur Jenkins, you were near the stern last night, overseeing the crew. The deckhand, Tompkins, admitted to cleaning the railings at 10:30 p.m. Yet we found gloves in his locker, stained with what may be blood. Can you confirm his movements?" Jenkins paled, his hands trembling as he set down the teapot. I was busy, sir. Tompkins was supposed to be cleaning, yes, but I didn't watch him every moment. He's a good lad, though. Wouldn't hurt a fly." "Vraiment," Poirot said softly. "And yet blood does not lie. Tell me, Jenkins, have you noticed anything missing from the yacht? Perhaps a tool? A weapon?" Jenkins hesitated, his eyes darting to Sir Reginald. "Nothing I can think of, sir. Everything's accounted for, far as I know." Poirot nodded, but his expression suggested he was far from satisfied. He turned to the guests, his voice taking on a new intensity. "The blood on the deck, it points to a struggle. The cufflink, it points to Sir Reginald. The tarpaulin, it suggests concealment. But let us consider another possibility. Someone wishes us to believe a crime has occurred, when perhaps it has not."
Fear, and Langston's sneer deepened. Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, while Mrs. Caldwell's nervous fidgeting grew more pronounced. Miss Grey's smile faltered, and Colonel Hartley cleared his throat as if to dispel the tension. Margaret Hartley, as always, remained silent, her gaze fixed on her brother. Poirot's questioning resumed, this time with a focus on the guest's relationships with Sir Reginald's proposed venture. "Sir Reginald," Poirot said, turning to the host, "you spoke of a new shipping route to the Americas. A venture of great profit, oui? Who among your guests stands to gain or lose from this announcement?" Sir Reginald's face reddened. "That's private business, Poirot. I told you, it's a shipping deal. Nothing to do with blood or cufflinks." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his tone mild but unrelenting. "But business, it stirs passions. Mademoiselle Eleanor, your father's venture, does it affect your future? Perhaps your inheritance?" Eleanor's lips parted, her expression guarded. "I don't know the details," she said. "Father doesn't discuss business with me. But yes, it might change things. He's been secretive lately." Lady Beatrice's voice was sharp. "Eleanor, that's enough. Reginald's plans are his own. This is no place for speculation." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Madam, speculation is the beginning of truth. Monsieur Langston, you had a failed deal with Sir Reginald. Did this venture threaten your interests?" Langston's smile was cold. "Ashburn's ventures are his own gamble. Our deal fell through months ago. I've no stake in his new plans." "Intéressant," Poirot murmured. He turned to Dr. Caldwell. "And you, Doctor, you spoke of a professional disagreement with Sir Reginald. Was it perhaps related to this venture?" Dr. Caldwell's face tightened. "It was a minor matter, a consultation fee he disputed, nothing more." Mrs. Caldwell's voice trembled as she added, "Maurice has no reason to harm anyone. He's a doctor, for heaven's sake." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Miss Grey. "Mademoiselle, you admitted to a flirtation with Sir Reginald. Did this venture perhaps promise you a role, a sponsorship for your theatre work?" Sylvia Grey flushed, her eyes darting to Lady Beatrice. "It was nothing serious. Sir Reginald was kind, that's all. He mentioned supporting the arts, but nothing specific. Colonel Hartley and his sister offered little, their answers curt. "I'm retired," the colonel said. "Ashburn's business doesn't concern me." Margaret nodded in agreement, her silence unbroken. The questioning paused as Jenkins announced a discovery. A small knife, its blade stained, found in a coil of rope near the lifeboats. The guests gasped, and Sir Reginald's face paled. "That's not mine," he said carefully. "Curious. A kitchen knife, yet not in the kitchen. Jenkins, who has access to the galley?" Jenkins swallowed. "The cook, mostly. But anyone could slip in, sir. It's not locked." Poirot's eyes narrowed. A red herring, perhaps, or a clue to the truth. We shall see. The afternoon turned to evening, and Poirot requested a private word with Hastings on the upper deck. The sea was calm, the horizon a blaze of orange and pink. "Hastings," Poirot said, his voice low. "The knife, the gloves, the tarpaulin, they are distractions, meant to mislead. The real crime, it is hidden in the motives of our guests. Someone wishes to protect a secret, or to destroy another's." Hastings frowned. "But who, Poirot? Jenkins? Tompkins? They seem the obvious suspects. But you don't trust the obvious, do you?" Poirot's smile was faint. "Non, mon ami. The obvious is a trap. We must look to the heart of the matter, the passions, the fears, the lies. The Sapphire Yacht is a stage, and the players, they perform. But Hercule Poirot, he sees through the performance." As night fell, the yacht's lights cast long shadows, and the mystery deepened, its threads tightening around the unsuspecting guests. Chapter 6. A Clue in Detail.
The sapphire yacht rocked gently on the evening tide, its lanterns casting a warm glow across the deck. But the atmosphere aboard was anything but warm. The discovery of the stained knife had tightened the coil of suspicion, and her guests, once so eager to bask in the luxury of Sir Reginald Ashburn's hospitality, now moved with the caution of those who sensed a predator in their midst. Hercule Poirot, his sharp eyes missing nothing, had spent the afternoon in quiet observation, his mind sifting through the fragments of the mystery. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever at his friend's side, felt the weight of the unanswered questions, his soldier's instinct urging action, yet trusting Poirot's methodical approach. The dining salon, where the guests gathered for dinner at 7:32 p.m., was a scene of strained decorum. The table was set with exquisite care, crystal glasses, silver cutlery, and plates of roasted pheasant, but the elegance could not mask the unease. Sir Reginald, his face flushed, presided with a forced joviality, while Lady Beatrice, her hands clasped tightly, maintained a brittle smile. Eleanor Ashburn, her auburn hair pinned neatly, stared at her plate, her expression unreadable. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife, Clara, sat close, their conversation a low murmur.
Seat. Instead, standing near the head of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice cutting through the murmur, "the puzzle before us grows more intricate. Blood, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, a tarpaulin, each a piece of the mosaic, but it is in the smallest detail that the truth often hides. Tonight, we seek such a detail." A ripple of tension passed through the group. Langston set down his glass with a clink. "More riddles, Poirot? You've got us chasing shadows. If there's a crime, where's the victim?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur Langston, the absence of a victim is itself a clue. But let us focus on what we have. The knife, found near the lifeboats, is from the galley. Yet the cook swears it was not missing. How then did it reach the deck? And the stain, blood or something else? These are questions that demand answers." The steward, Jenkins, hovering near the door, shifted uncomfortably, Poirot's gaze fixed on him. "Monsieur Jenkins, you oversee the galley. When did you last see this knife?" Jenkins swallowed, his hands twisting. I don't know, sir." "The cook handles the utensils. I checked the galley this morning, and everything seemed in order." "Vraiment," Poirot said softly. "And yet a knife does not walk. Someone took it. Someone placed it. Let us consider another detail. The cufflink. Sir Reginald, you say you lost it before dinner, but tell me, when did you last wear the jacket from which it came?" Sir Reginald frowned, his fingers brushing his cuff. "I wore it yesterday afternoon, before changing for dinner. I didn't notice the cufflink was missing until you pointed it out." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Intéressant. And the handkerchief, also yours? Found with blood in your cabin. When did you last use it?" "I don't recall," Sir Reginald said, his voice edged with irritation. "I have several. They're kept in my drawer. Anyone could have taken one." Lady Beatrice's voice was sharp. "Reginald, this is absurd. Why would anyone take your things? This is some dreadful mistake." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Madame, mistakes do not bleed. Let us examine another detail, the time. The cry was heard at 10:47 p.m., and the blood on the deck was fresh. Dr. Caldwell, you are a physician. How long would blood remain wet in the sea air?" Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his tone measured. "In this climate, perhaps 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the quantity. The stain was small, so likely less than an hour." "Précisément," Poirot said. "So the blood was shed between 9:47 and 10:47 p.m. Let us refine our alibis. Mademoiselle Eleanor, you were in your cabin reading. Did you perhaps glance at a clock?" Poirot turned to Miss Grey.
Mademoiselle, you were with Lady Beatrice. Did you notice the time, perhaps on the ship's clock, near the piano? Sylvia Grey hesitated, her fingers tightening on her necklace. I think it was just after 10:30. I'm not certain. We were talking, and I wasn't paying attention. Lady Beatrice nodded quickly. Yes, we were together. I saw the clock at 10:32, I believe. Poirot's gaze shifted to Colonel Hartley. Monsieur le Colonel, you and Dr. Caldwell were in the lounge. Did you note the time? Hartley cleared his throat. I glanced at my watch around 10:35. We were deep in conversation. Mrs. Caldwell, her voice trembling, added, I was with Maurice, except for a moment in the powder room. I don't recall the exact time. Langston, his tone sharp, interjected. I was on the upper deck, as I said. I don't wear a watch when I'm relaxing. It was probably around 10:30. Margaret Hartley, her voice soft but clear, spoke for the first time. I was in my cabin, asleep. I don't keep a clock by my bed. Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. Bon, the times, they are vague, yet they form a pattern. Let us consider another detail, a gesture, a word, a contradiction. Mademoiselle Grey, when you spoke with Lady Beatrice, did you notice her demeanor? Sylvia's eyes widened. She seemed fine. Perhaps a little distracted, but we were just chatting. Lady Beatrice's smile was tight. I was perfectly composed, Monsieur Poirot. It was a pleasant evening until the cry. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Curieux! A pleasant evening, yet a cry pierces the night. Let us turn to the tarpaulin found in the hold. Jenkins, who has access to the storage area? Jenkins shifted, his face pale. The crew, mostly. But the hold isn't locked. Anyone could have gone in. Poirot's questions continued, each probing deeper, each answer revealing a flicker of unease. Hastings, watching from the sidelines, marveled at Poirot's ability to unearth tension in the smallest details, a glance, a hesitation, a too-quick reply. It was during a lull in the questioning that Poirot's attention fell on a seemingly trivial object, a small, silver cigarette case left on a side table near the piano. It was engraved with the initials V.L., Victor Langston's. Monsieur Langston, Poirot said, holding up the case. This is yours, oui? Where was it last night? Langston's expression hardened. I left it in the lounge, I think. I was smoking earlier. What of it? Poirot opened the case, revealing a single cigarette. We shall see what it says. Here. The dinner ended in silence, the guests dispersing to their cabins, their faces etched with fear. Poirot and Hastings retired to the library, where Poirot examined the cigarette case under a magnifying glass. Hastings, he said, his voice low, this blood, it is fresh, like the others. The cigarette case was in the lounge, yet Langston claims he was on the upper deck. A contradiction, no? Hastings frowned. Do you think Langston's involved, Poirot? He's a cold fish, but a murderer? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Mon ami, the truth is not yet clear. But this cigarette case, it is a detail that does not fit. And Hercule Poirot, he does not like details that do not fit. We must watch, and we must think. The sapphire yacht hides its secrets, but they will not hide for long. The night deepened. The yacht's gentle sway a deceptive lullaby, its clues pointing to a truth just out of reach. Chapter 7. More Lies Surface. The sapphire yacht cut through the dark waters of the English Channel, its lights casting fleeting reflections on the waves. But the elegance of the vessel could not dispel the growing sense of dread that clung to its decks. The discovery of the blood-stained cigarette case, belonging to Victor Langston,
had deepened the mystery, turning the guests' uneasy glances into outright suspicion. Hercule Poirot, with his unerring focus, seemed to thrive in the tension, his little gray cells working tirelessly to unravel the threads of deceit. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal, followed his friend's lead. Though the tangle of clues, blood, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, and now a cigarette case, left him grasping for clarity. The evening had settled into an uneasy quiet, the guests retreating to the main salon after dinner for coffee and liqueurs. The room, with its polished mahogany and soft lantern light, should have been a haven of comfort. But the atmosphere was thick with mistrust. Sir Reginald Ashburn, his face a mask of barely contained frustration, stood by the bar, sipping a brandy. Lady Beatrice, her emerald gown replaced by a more subdued navy dress, sat rigidly on a velvet settee, her hands folded tightly. Eleanor Ashburn, her auburn hair catching the light, stared out a porthole, her expression distant yet tense. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara huddled together, their whispers sharp and urgent. Victor Langston, his sharp features set vested in a cynical sneer. Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's poise fraying, toyed nervously with her bracelet, while Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret sat in stiff silence, their eyes darting between the others. Poirot entered the salon at precisely 9:17 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, his small frame radiating an air of quiet authority.
Messieurs, he began, his voice clear and measured. The web of this mystery grows ever more tangled. A cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, and now a cigarette case stained with blood. These are not mere accidents. They are the footprints of a crime. Tonight, we must peel back the layers of deceit. The truth, it lies in the secrets you keep. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the creak of the yacht and the distant lapping of waves. Langston, his jaw tight, spoke first. "This is preposterous, Poirot. You're accusing me because of a cigarette case? Anyone could have placed it there. I'm no fool to leave such an obvious clue." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Monsieur Langston, the obvious clue is often the most deceptive. But let us explore further. Secrets, they fester like wounds. Who among you has something to hide?" The question hung in the air, and Hastings, standing near the door, noted the shifting postures, the averted gazes. The guests were a tapestry of motives, woven with threads of greed, envy, and fear. Poirot's eyes swept the room, lingering on each face, as if reading the thoughts behind their masks. He turned to Lady Beatrice, his tone gentle but probing. "Madame, you spoke of an argument with your husband over his business ventures. Was there perhaps more to this disagreement than you have shared?" Lady Beatrice's lips parted, her hands trembling slightly. "It was nothing unusual," she said, her voice strained. "Reginald's plans often cause tension. He's ambitious, and I worry about the risks. That's all." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Eleanor. "Mademoiselle Eleanor, you mentioned your father's venture might affect your inheritance. Did you know more than you have said? Perhaps a secret he kept from you?" Eleanor's eyes flashed with defiance. "I told you, I don't know the details. Father keeps his business close. If there's a secret, it's his, not mine." Poirot's attention turned to Dr. Caldwell. "Doctor, your disagreement with Sir Reginald over a consultation fee, was it truly so trivial? Or was there a deeper grievance, perhaps tied to his new venture?" Dr. Caldwell's face tightened, his glasses glinting in the lantern light. "It was a professional matter, nothing more. I have no interest in his shipping schemes." Mrs. Caldwell, her voice trembling, added, "Maurice is honest, Monsieur Poirot. He's a doctor, not a schemer." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he turned to Miss Grey. "Mademoiselle, your flirtation with Sir Reginald, did it perhaps stir jealousy or resentment?"
Did someone wish to harm him or you? Sylvia Gray's cheeks flushed, her fingers tightening on her bracelet. It was harmless, I swear. Reginald was charming, but it meant nothing. I've no enemies here.
Nothing more.
Margaret Hartley nodded, her plain face composed. We keep to ourselves, monsieur. We've no secrets. The questioning paused as Jenkins, the steward, entered with a tray of coffee. His hands shook slightly, and Poirot's gaze fixed on him. Monsieur Jenkins, the knife from the galley, how could it vanish without notice? And the tarpaulin in the hold, did you see anyone near it last night? Jenkins paled, his voice faltering. I don't know, sir. The galley's busy, and the hold's accessible. I swear I saw nothing odd. Poirot's questions were relentless, each probing deeper into the guest's secrets. Hastings watched, marveling at his friend's ability to unearth tension in the smallest cracks of their stories. It was during a lull in the interrogation that a new discovery surfaced, brought by the young deckhand, Tompkins, who entered the salon, his face ashen. "Sir," Tompkins said, addressing Poirot, "I found something in the lifeboat, under the seat. I thought you should see it." He held out a small leather-bound notebook, its pages creased and slightly damp. Poirot took it, his gloved fingers turning the pages with care. The notebook contained cryptic entries, dates, sums of money, and initials. VL, MC, SG. One entry dated the previous day read, RA to announce tomorrow. Risk too great. Action required. A gasp rippled through the room. Sir Reginald's face reddened. "That's not mine," he snapped. "I've never seen it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. Curieux. A notebook hidden in a lifeboat with initials matching our guests. And this entry, it suggests a plan, no? A plan to silence Sir Reginald's announcement. Langston's voice was sharp. "You're grasping at straws, Poirot. Those initials could mean anything. This proves nothing." Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses. "I agree. It's circumstantial at best." Miss Gray's voice trembled. "Why would anyone write such a thing? It's madness." Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. "Madness, mademoiselle, or method? This notebook, it is a clue that speaks of motive. Someone aboard this yacht feared Sir Reginald's venture, feared it enough to act." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, their secrets surfacing like bubbles in the sea. Poirot closed the notebook, tucking it into his pocket. "We shall examine this further, but let us consider the lies that have emerged. Affairs, financial disputes, hidden fears. Each of you carries a burden. The truth, it is close, mes amis." The salon emptied, the guests retiring to their cabins, their faces pale with dread. Poirot and Hastings moved.
"Fears," Hastings frowned. "Do you think it's a conspiracy, Poirot?
More than one of them involved? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Mon ami, the Sapphire Yacht is a stage, and the players, they weave a tangled web. The notebook is a thread we must follow. Tomorrow we shall pull it, and see what unravels." The yacht sailed on, its secrets locked within its polished walls, and the mystery grew ever darker, its truth hovering just beyond reach. Chapter 8. The Emotional Turning Point. The Sapphire Yacht lay anchored under a starlit sky, its polished decks bathed in the silvery glow of the moon. But the beauty of the night could not dispel the suffocating tension that gripped its passengers. The discovery of the cryptic notebook, with its ominous entry and incriminating initials, had shattered the fragile veneer of civility among the guests. Each glance, each whispered word, carried the weight of suspicion, and Hercule Poirot, with his relentless pursuit of truth, was the fulcrum upon which their fears balanced. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the railing, felt the weight of the mystery pressing down, his mind reeling from the tangle of clues: blood, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, a tarpaulin, and now a notebook that hinted at a sinister plot. The main salon, where the guests had gathered after a tense dinner, was a crucible of emotion. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and the undercurrent of dread. Sir Reginald Ashbourne, his broad shoulders slumped, sat by the fireplace, his brandy untouched. Lady Beatrice, her face pale beneath her carefully applied rouge, clutched a shawl around her shoulders, her eyes darting to her daughter, Eleanor, who stood by a porthole, her auburn hair a stark contrast to her ashen complexion. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife, Clara, sat close, their hands entwined, though Clara's trembling fingers betrayed her anxiety. Victor Langston, his sharp features set in a scowl, leaned against the bar, while Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's poise crumbling, twisted a handkerchief in her lap. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister, Margaret, occupied a corner, their silence heavy, though Margaret's eyes flickered with a quiet intensity. Poirot entered the salon at precisely 9:43 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, his small frame radiating an air of calm authority. He declined a seat, instead standing before the gathered guests, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "we stand at a crossroads in this mystery. The clues, blood, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, a tarpaulin, and now a notebook, they form a pattern, but it is the human heart that holds the key. Tonight, someone will break, and a truth, it will emerge." The words hung in the... Reginald's jaw tightened. Lady Beatrice's hands trembled, and Eleanor's gaze dropped to the floor. Langston's sneer faltered, and Miss Grey's eyes filled with tears. Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, while Mrs. Caldwell's breath hitched. Colonel Hartley cleared his throat, and Margaret's lips parted, as if on the verge of speaking. Poirot's gaze fixed on Sylvia Grey, whose nervous fingers shredded her handkerchief. "Mademoiselle Grey," he said gently, "you admitted to a flirtation with Sir Reginald. But there is more, a secret, perhaps, that weighs heavily on you. Speak, and lighten your burden." Sylvia's eyes widened, her voice trembling. I told you, it was nothing serious. Reginald was kind, charming. He promised to support my theater troupe, but it was just talk. I swear." Angling to her feet, she threw her arms around Lady Beatrice, her voice breaking. "Mother, I didn't want to hurt anyone. I swear I didn't know it would come to this." A gasp rippled through the room. Lady Beatrice's face drained of color, and Sir Reginald's glass clattered to the table. "Sylvia, what are you saying?" he demanded. Sylvia's tears spilled over, her voice barely a whisper. "I knew about your venture, Reginald. I overheard you talking to Langston about it. A deal that would ruin so many. I told someone who was desperate. I didn't think they'd go this far." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Mademoiselle, to whom did you speak, and what did they do?" Sylvia's voice broke. "I told Victor, Mr. Langston. He was furious about the deal. I didn't know there'd be blood." Langston's face hardened, his voice sharp. "That's a lie, Poirot. I knew nothing of this until you started your meddling." Poirot raised a hand, his tone calm but firm. "Monsieur Langston, we shall return to you. Mademoiselle Grey, continue. What did you tell him?" Sylvia sobbed, her words tumbling out. "I told him the venture would cut him out. His investments, his future, ruined. He said he'd handle it, but I didn't know what he meant. I swear I didn't want anyone hurt." The room erupted in chaos. Sir Reginald stood, his face red with fury. "You betrayed me, Sylvia? After everything?" Lady Beatrice clutched her husband's arm, her eyes wide with shock. Eleanor's hands covered her face, and Dr. Caldwell's expression darkened. Mrs. Caldwell gasped, and Colonel Hartley muttered something under his breath. Margaret Hartley for the first time leaned forward, her eyes blazing. Poirot's voice cut through the din.
The group, his voice steady. "The notebook speaks of a risk too great, of action required. Mademoiselle Grey's confession points to a motive, jealousy, financial ruin. But the blood,
It tells another story. We must find its source." The steward, Jenkins, hovering near the door, shifted nervously. Poirot's gaze fixed on him. "Monsieur Jenkins, you have been most quiet. The knife, the tarpaulin, did you see anything you have not told us?" Jenkins paled, his hands trembling. I saw Mr. Langston near the hold last night, sir, around 10:35. He was carrying something heavy, wrapped in cloth. I thought it was supplies." Langston's voice was icy. "That's a lie, Jenkins. I was on the deck, as I said." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Curious. A contradiction, no? We shall resolve it. For now, Mademoiselle Gray's words have opened a door. The truth, it is near." The guests dispersed, their faces pale, their secrets unraveling. Poirot and Hastings moved to the library, where Poirot examined the notebook again. "Hastings," he said, his voice low, "Sylvia's confession is a crack in the facade. Langston's motive is clear, but the blood, it points to a deed already done. We must find the victim, or the proof that none exists." Hastings frowned. "Do you think Langston acted alone, Poirot?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Mon ami, the Sapphire Yacht is a nest of secrets. Sylvia's tears, they reveal one truth, but others remain hidden. Tomorrow, we shall tighten the net." Poirot, the night deepened. The yacht's gentle sway, a deceptive calm, as the mystery pulsed with new life, its secrets teetering on the edge of revelation.
Chapter 9. The Trap. The Sapphire Yacht lay cloaked in the velvet darkness of the night, its lanterns casting long shadows across the deck, but the serenity of the sea was a stark contrast to the storm of suspicion brewing within. Sylvia Gray's tearful confession had cracked the facade of civility, exposing raw motives and hidden fears among the guests. The cryptic notebook, the bloodstains, the cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, and the tarpaulin had woven a web of intrigue, and Hercule Poirot, with his relentless precision, was poised to tighten it. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by his friend's side, felt the weight of the moment, sensing that the mystery was nearing a critical juncture. The main salon, where the guests were summoned at 10:06 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, was a crucible of tension. The room's opulence, polished mahogany, crystal chandeliers, and plush velvet, seemed to mock the unease that gripped its occupants. Sir Reginald Ashbourne stood by the fireplace, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Lady Beatrice, seated on a settee, clutched her shawl, her eyes darting between her husband and daughter Eleanor, who leaned against a wall, her auburn hair framing a face pale with strain. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara sat close, their hands entwined, though Clara's trembling betrayed her fear. Victor Langston, his sharp features set in defiance, stood near the bar, while Miss Sylvia Gray, her eyes red from crying, sat hunched, avoiding the others' gazes. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret occupied a corner, their silence heavy, though Margaret's eyes burned with quiet intensity. Poirot entered the salon with his characteristic precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache a perfect curve. He stood before the group, his small frame commanding the room's attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and deliberate, "we approach the heart of this mystery. Blood, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, a tarpaulin, a notebook, and now a confession. Mademoiselle Gray has revealed a truth, but it is only a fragment. Tonight, we set a trap for the whole truth. The guilty, they will reveal themselves." A murmur of unease rippled through the group. Langston's voice was sharp. "A trap, Poirot? This is theatrics, not detection. You've got nothing but guesses and a hysterical actress's story." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Monsieur Langston, the truth is no guess. It is a mosaic, built from details. You deny involvement, yet your cigarette case bears blood. and Jenkins saw you near the hold. Let us test your denials." Poirot turned to the group, his tone calm but commanding. "We shall reconstruct the night of the cry, 10:47 p.m. Each of you will recount your movements, and we shall see where the contradictions lie. But first, a demonstration.
Bearing the gold cufflink, the monogrammed handkerchief, the stained knife, the tarpaulin, and the notebook. Poirot arranged them on a table, each item a silent accusation. "These," he said, "are the threads of our mystery. Let us weave them together." He began with Sir Reginald. "Monsieur, you claim you were mingling, yet your cufflink was found with blood, and your handkerchief in your cabin. Where were you at 10:47 p.m.? Sir Reginald's face reddened. "I was on the main deck, talking to guests. I told you, the cufflink must have fallen earlier. As for the handkerchief, anyone could have taken it." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Lady Beatrice. "Madame, you were with Mademoiselle Gray near the piano. Did you see your husband at that moment?" Lady Beatrice's hands tightened on her shawl. I believe so. He was moving about. I wasn't watching him closely." Poirot turned to Eleanor. "Mademoiselle Eleanor, you were in your cabin reading. Did you hear anything before the cry? Perhaps a struggle, a footstep?" Eleanor's eyes flickered. "No, nothing. I told you. I was absorbed in my book." Dr. Caldwell, his voice steady, said, "I was in the lounge with Colonel Hartley, as I've said. We heard the cry and came running." Mrs. Caldwell nodded, her voice trembling. "I was with Maurice, except for a moment in the powder room." Langston, his tone icy, said, "I was on the upper deck, smoking. I heard the cry from there." Miss Gray, her voice barely audible, said, "I was with Lady Beatrice. I didn't see anything until the cry." Colonel Hartley and Margaret confirmed their earlier statements, their alibis unchanged. Poirot listened, his fingers steepled, his eyes darting between the guests. "Bon," he said. "Now, let us test these truths. Jenkins, you saw Monsieur Langston near the hold at 10:35 p.m., carrying something heavy. Describe it." Jenkins swallowed, his hands trembling. "It was wrapped in cloth, sir. Looked like a bundle, about the size of a small crate. I didn't think much of it then." Langston's eyes narrowed. "That's a lie, Poirot. I wasn't near the hold." Poirot's voice was soft but piercing. "Monsieur, lies are like shadows. They shift, but they cannot hide forever. Let us try an experiment. I propose we reenact the moment of the cry. Each of you return to where you claim to have been at 10:47 p.m. Hastings, you will stand at the stern, where the blood was found, and cry out at my signal. We shall see what is seen, what is heard." The guests exchanged uneasy glances, but complied, dispersing to their stated positions. Sir Reginald and Lady Beatrice moved to the main deck, Eleanor to her cabin. Cry, mimicking Lady Beatrice's alarm from the previous night. The guests returned, their faces a mix of confusion and apprehension. Poirot questioned each in turn. "What did you see? What did you hear?" Lady Beatrice, her voice trembling, said, "I heard the cry clearly from the deck. I saw no one near the stern." Eleanor, emerging from her cabin, said, "I heard it faintly through the door. I didn't look out." Dr. Caldwell and Colonel Hartley confirmed hearing the cry from the lounge, while Mrs. Caldwell, who had stepped to the powder room, said she heard it but saw nothing. Langston, from the upper deck, claimed he heard it clearly but saw no one below. Miss Gray, near the piano, echoed Lady Beatrice's account. Margaret Hartley, her voice soft, said she heard the cry from her cabin but stayed inside. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he gathered the group back in the salon. "Intéressant. The cry it carries, yet no one saw another near the stern. But one detail stands out. Monsieur Langston,
You say you were on the upper deck, yet Jenkins places you at the hold 10 minutes earlier. The bundle you carried, what was it? Langston's face hardened. I carried nothing. Jenkins is mistaken. Poirot's smile was faint but knowing. Perhaps, but the notebook, it speaks of action required. The blood, it speaks of violence. The trap, it is set. Someone among you knows more than they say. I give you this chance. Speak now, or the truth will be forced into the light. The silence was deafening, broken only by a sob from Mrs. Caldwell. I can't bear this, she whispered, her voice breaking. Maurice, tell him about the money. Dr. Caldwell's face paled, his glasses slipping down his nose. Clara, be quiet! Poirot's gaze sharpened. Monsieur le Docteur, what money does Madame speak of? A secret, perhaps, tied to Sir Reginald's venture? Dr. Caldwell's shoulders slumped, his voice low. It's nothing criminal. Sir Reginald owed me a substantial sum. A loan, not a fee. He promised to repay it with his new venture. I was anxious, that's all. The admission hung in the air, another crack in the facade. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Bon, another truth emerges. The trap, it tightens. Tomorrow, we shall see who else breaks. The guests dispersed, their faces etched with fear, as the sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets teetering on the edge of exposure. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The sapphire yacht lay anchored under a sky bruised with the first hints of dawn, its opulent deck silent, save for the gentle lapping of waves as tarpaulin and cryptic notebook had woven a tapestry of deceit. And now Poirot was ready to unveil the truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing by his friend's side, felt a mixture of anticipation and dread, knowing that Poirot's revelations were always as dramatic as they were precise. The main salon, where the guests were summoned at 6:12 a.m. as noted by the ship's clock, was a scene of quiet dread. The room's grandeur, its polished mahogany, crystal chandeliers, and velvet upholstery, seemed to mock the pallor of the assembled company. Sir Reginald Ashbourne sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of weary defiance. Lady Beatrice, her hands clasped tightly, stared at her husband with a mixture of fear and resignation. Eleanor Ashbourne, her auburn hair disheveled, leaned against a wall, her eyes red-rimmed. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara sat close, Clara's trembling hands betraying her terror. Victor Langston, his sharp features set in a scowl, stood by the bar, while Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's poise shattered, clutched a shawl around her shoulders. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret occupied a corner, their silence heavy, though Margaret's eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. Poirot entered the salon with his characteristic precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache a perfect curve. He stood before the group, his small frame commanding absolute attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant, "the time has come to unravel the mystery of the sapphire yacht. Blood, a cufflink, a handkerchief, a knife, a tarpaulin, a notebook, and confessions. They have led us to this moment. A crime has been committed, and the guilty stand among us. Hercule Poirot will now reveal the truth." A heavy silence fell, broken only by the creak of the yacht. Hastings, standing near the door, felt his pulse quicken. Poirot's eyes swept the room, lingering on each face as if reading the secrets etched within. "Let us begin," Poirot said,
with the facts. At 10:47 p.m., a cry was heard, and blood was found on the stern deck, beside Sir Reginald's cufflink. More blood was in his cabin, with his handkerchief. A knife stained was found near the lifeboats. A tarpaulin, also stained, was in the hold. A notebook with cryptic entries spoke of a risk too great. And Mademoiselle Gray confessed to sharing Sir Reginald's plans with Monsieur Langston, who faced ruin. Dr. Caldwell admitted to a financial debt. These are the threads of our mosaic. Poirot paced slowly, his hands
Venture, a new shipping route, threatened others. Who among you feared this announcement? Sir Reginald's face reddened. I've said it before, Poirot. This is business, not murder. No one's dead. Poirot's moustache twitched. Perhaps, monsieur, but let us consider the alibis. Each of you claims to have been elsewhere at 10:47 p.m. Yet, Jenkins saw Monsieur Langston near the hold at 10:35, carrying a bundle. Monsieur Langston, you deny this. Yet, your cigarette case, stained with blood, was in the lounge. Langston's voice was icy. I told you, someone tampered with it. I was on the upper deck. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Sylvia Gray. Mademoiselle Gray, you confessed to telling Monsieur Langston of Sir Reginald's plans. You feared his ruin. Did you perhaps act to protect him? Sylvia's eyes filled with tears. No, I only told him what I heard. I didn't want anyone hurt. Poirot turned to Dr. Caldwell. Monsieur le Docteur, you admitted Sir Reginald owed you money. A motive, no? Did you act to secure your debt? Dr. Caldwell's face paled. I'm a doctor, not a killer. I trusted Reginald to pay. Mrs. Caldwell's voice trembled. He's telling the truth, Monsieur Poirot. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he turned to the group. Bon, let us consider the notebook. Its entries, VLMCSG, point to Langston, Caldwell, Gray. But there is another initial, R.A. Sir Reginald. The notebook suggests you were the target. Yet, you stand before us. Why then the blood? The room was silent, the guests frozen. Poirot continued, his voice rising. The blood. It is the key. It was fresh at 10:47 p.m., meaning the act occurred between 9:47 and 10:47. The cry, heard by all, was Lady Beatrice's. But what did she see? Not a body, but a cufflink and blood. The handkerchief, the knife, the tarpaulin, they suggest concealment. And the notebook, it speaks of action required. Poirot paused, his eyes locking onto Margaret Hartley. Mademoiselle Margaret, you have been silent, yet your eyes, they see much. You were in your cabin, asleep, you say. But I think not. You know something, oui? Margaret's plain face tightened, her voice soft but steady. I saw nothing, Monsieur Poirot. I was asleep. Poirot's smile was faint. Vraiment, but let us test this. The trap, it was set last night. The reenactment planned, meant to mislead, and the cry, it was a signal, oui? A signal to draw attention to the scene. He turned to Sir Reginald. Monsieur, your venture was not the motive. It was the excuse. The true motive was to discredit you, to ruin your reputation before your announcement. Someone wished to stop your venture without bloodshed by making it appear you were attacked, or worse. Sir Reginald's face paled. Who would do such a thing? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The one who knew your plans best, the one who feared their exposure, the one who stood to lose the most. He turned to Lady Beatrice. Madame, it was you.
Lady Beatrice gasped, her hands trembling. "That's absurd! I'm his wife!" Poirot's voice was relentless. "Précisément. As his wife, you knew his venture, a deal with questionable partners, oui? You feared it would ruin your family, your daughter's future. You staged the blood, the cufflink, the handkerchief to create a scandal, to force Sir Reginald to abandon his plans." Eleanor's voice broke. "Mother, is this true?" Lady Beatrice's facade crumbled, her voice a whisper. I only wanted to protect us. The deal, it was dangerous. I thought if people believed he was attacked, he'd reconsider." Poirot nodded. "The blood came from a medical vial, supplied by Dr. Caldwell, who owed you a favor. The notebook was your creation, planted to implicate others. The cry, it was your signal to draw us to the scene." Dr. Caldwell's face fell. "I gave her the vial, yes, but I didn't know her full plan. The room was silent, the truth laid bare." Poirot's voice softened. "The Sapphire Yacht is safe, mes amis. No murder, only deception. But the heart, it speaks louder than blood." The guests sat stunned as the Sapphire Yacht sailed on, its secrets finally exposed. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The Sapphire Yacht glided through the early morning mist, its polished decks shrouded in a quiet that seemed to echo the stunned silence of its passengers. The revelation of Lady Beatrice's deception had left the guests reeling, their earlier suspicions replaced by a mixture of relief and unease. The absence of a murder, while a reprieve, did little to soothe the raw emotions exposed by Hercule Poirot's meticulous unraveling of the truth. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the railing, gazed out at the gray expanse of the English Channel, his mind turning over the events of the night. Poirot's genius, as always, had transformed chaos into clarity, but the cost of that clarity lingered in the air. The main salon, where the guests had gathered for breakfast at 8:27 a.m., as noted by the ship's clock, was a subdued affair. The opulence of the room, its crystal chandeliers, mahogany paneling, and plush velvet, felt hollow in the wake of the drink. Pale and silent, avoided her husband's gaze, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Eleanor Ashbourne, her auburn hair loosely pinned, stared at her plate, her expression a mix of betrayal and sorrow. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara sat close, their faces etched with guilt and relief. Victor Langston, his sharp features softened by the morning light, sipped his coffee with a contemplative air. Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's poise slowly returning, managed a faint smile, though her eyes were red-rimmed. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret ate in silence, Margaret's gaze occasionally flickering to Poirot with something akin to respect. Poirot entered the salon with his usual precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache immaculate. He declined a seat, instead standing near the head of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice calm and measured, "the mystery of the Sapphire Yacht is resolved. No blood was shed in violence, but the heart, it bled with secrets. A deception was staged, not to harm, but to protect. Yet the truth, it has its own justice." The guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes fixed on Poirot. Sir Reginald cleared his throat, his voice hoarse. "Poirot, you've cleared my name, and for that I'm grateful. But my wife." He trailed off, glancing at Lady Beatrice, whose eyes remained downcast. Poirot's gaze softened. "Monsieur, the heart of a wife it seeks to protect, even when misguided. Madame Beatrice acted out of fear, for her family, for her daughter's future. The blood, the cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, the tarpaulin, the notebook.
They were props in a play, designed to force you to reconsider your venture. Lady Beatrice's voice was barely audible. I never meant for it to go so far. I thought a scandal would make you see reason, Reginald. Your deal, it was with dangerous men. I couldn't let it destroy us. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. Mother, why didn't you tell me? I could have helped. Lady Beatrice shook her head, her voice breaking. I wanted to protect you, Eleanor. Your father's ambition, it's consumed him. Poirot raised a hand, his tone gentle but firm. Madame, your intentions, they were born of love. But love, it can blind. The vial of blood supplied by Dr. Caldwell was a clever touch, but it could not hide from Hercule Poirot. The notebook, with its cryptic entries, was your creation, meant to cast suspicion on others. The cry, it was your signal to draw us to the scene. But the criminals. But you are complicit in a deception that caused fear and suspicion. The heart, it seeks to justify, but the mind, it must see clearly. Victor Langston, his voice softer than usual, spoke up. And me, Poirot? You suspected me. My cigarette case, my initials in the notebook. Was I just a pawn in this? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Monsieur Langston, you were a convenient target. Your failed deal with Sir Reginald made you a plausible suspect. The cigarette case, stained with blood, was placed to mislead. But your alibi, though vague, held true. You are innocent. Of this, at least. Sylvia Grey, her voice steadying, said, I'm sorry, Monsieur Poirot. I shouldn't have spoken to Victor about the venture. I didn't know it would lead to this. Poirot's smile was faint. Mademoiselle Grey, your confession was the crack that broke the dam. The truth, it flows from such moments. You are forgiven. Colonel Hartley cleared his throat. Well, Poirot, you've done it again. Turned a storm into a calm. But what now? We can't just sail on as if nothing happened. Margaret Hartley, her voice soft but clear, added, You've shown us our own shadows, Monsieur Poirot. That's no small thing. Poirot inclined his head. Mademoiselle Margaret, the shadows, they are part of the human heart. But light, it reveals all. Hercule Poirot seeks only to bring order to chaos. He turned to the group, his voice taking on a reflective tone. This affair, it teaches us a lesson, oui? The heart, it drives us to act, sometimes wisely, sometimes foolishly. Madame Beatrice sought to protect her family, but in doing so, she wove a web of deceit. The sapphire yacht became a stage, not for murder, but for fear. And yet, the truth, it is a balm. No one is dead, and so we may move forward. Hastings, watching from the sidelines, marveled at Poirot's ability to weave philosophy into detection. The little Belgian's words were not merely a summation, but a meditation on human nature, delivered with the elegance of a poet. Poirot continued, his eyes sweeping the room. The little gray cells, they see what the heart hides. The blood, it was no murder, but a cry for attention. The cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, they were symbols of a deeper truth. And the notebook, it was a script written to mislead. But Hercule Poirot, he reads between the lines. Sir Reginald's voice was gruff. What happens now, Poirot? My wife's actions. Do we call the police? Poirot's expression was gentle. Monsieur, the crime, the weight of Poirot's words settling over them. The mystery was solved, the deception laid bare. But the emotional scars would linger. Poirot, sensing the moment, bowed slightly. Mes amis, my work here is done.
The sapphire yacht is safe, and the truth is free. I shall take my leave." He turned to Hastings, his eyes twinkling. "Come, mon ami. The sea air, it is refreshing, but London calls. We have had enough of yachts and secrets, oui?" As the guests dispersed, their faces a mix of relief and reflection, Hastings followed Poirot to the upper deck. The morning mist was lifting, revealing a clear horizon. "Poirot," Hastings said, "you've done it again. Turned a puzzle into a lesson. But how did you know it was Lady Beatrice?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Mon ami, the heart. It betrays itself in small ways. A glance, a tremor, a too quick denial. Madame Beatrice's love for her family was her motive. But her fear, it was her undoing. The little grey cells, they see all." The sapphire yacht sailed on, its secrets laid bare, and Poirot, ever the master, stood ready for the next mystery, his mind as sharp as the dawn. Chapter 12. The Aftermath. The sapphire yacht moved steadily through the calm waters of the English Channel, its gleaming decks now bathed in the soft light of mid-morning. The revelation of Lady Beatrice's deception had lifted the shadow of violence from the vessel, but it left behind a quieter, more introspective unease. The guests, once bound by suspicion, now grappled with the emotional fallout of truth exposed. Hercule Poirot, his work on the mystery complete, remained a figure of quiet authority, his presence a reminder that even the most carefully woven lies could not withstand the scrutiny of his little grey cells. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the stern, watched the sea stretch endlessly before him, his mind turning over the delicate balance Poirot had struck between justice and compassion. The dining salon, where the guests gathered for lunch at 12:34 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, was a study in subdued reflection. The table was set with the same elegance, fine china, silver cutlery, and crystal glasses, but the atmosphere lacked its former sparkle. Sir Reginald Ashbourne sat at the head, his broad frame less imposing, his eyes heavy with a mix of relief and regret. Lady Beatrice, seated beside him, was pale and silent, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the table. Eleanor Ashbourne, her Margaret, sat with her usual reserve, though her eyes held a new warmth. Poirot entered the salon with his characteristic precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache a perfect curve. He declined a seat, instead standing near the head of the table, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and measured, "the storm has passed, and the sapphire yacht sails in calmer waters. The truth, it has been revealed. A deception, not a murder, driven by fear and love. But the aftermath, it requires reflection, oui? We must consider what we have learned and what we carry forward." The guests exchanged glances, their silence heavy with the weight of the past days. Sir Reginald cleared his throat, his voice gruff but softer than before. "Poirot, you've saved us from a scandal, and for that, I'm in your debt. But my wife's actions, they've shaken us. What do we do now?" Poirot's eyes softened. "Monsieur, the heart of a family, it is strong, even when tested. Madame Beatrice sought to protect you, though her methods were misguided. The question is not what you do, but how you rebuild. Trust, it is fragile, but not lost." Lady Beatrice's voice was barely audible. "I never meant to cause such pain, Reginald. I thought I was saving us, saving Eleanor. Can you forgive me?" Sir Reginald's jaw tightened,
but his eyes held a flicker of compassion. "It'll take time, Beatrice. But we're still a family. We'll find a way." Eleanor reached for her mother's hand, her voice steady. "Mother, father, we'll get through this. Together." Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Dr. Caldwell. "Monsieur le Docteur, you provided the vial of blood, a small act that grew large in consequence. What have you learned?" Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his face pale. "I was wrong to help, Monsieur Poirot. I thought it was harmless, a favor for a friend. I'll make amends, I swear." Mrs. Caldwell, her voice trembling, added, "We were foolish, Maurice and I. We didn't see the harm until it was too late." Poirot's smile was faint. "Madame, the heart seeks to help, but the mind must guide it. You too will learn from this." He turned to Victor Langston, whose cynical air had softened. "Monsieur Langston, you are a target of suspicion, your cigarette case a prop in the deception. Yet you too carry a burden, your anger at Sir Reginald's venture. What will you do with it?" Langston's eyes met Poirot's, his voice low. "I was bitter, yes. The deal cost me dearly. But I see now it wasn't worth this chaos. I'll move on, Poirot." Miss Sylvia Grey, her poise returning, spoke
Hartley, her plain face alight with quiet admiration, said, "You've shown us our weaknesses, monsieur, and our strengths." Poirot inclined his head, his expression reflective. "Mes amis, the sapphire yacht has been a mirror, reflecting the truths we hide. The blood, it was not shed in violence, but it spoke of fear. The cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, the tarpaulin, the notebook, they were the tools of a desperate heart. And yet, no one was lost. This is the lesson. The truth. It heals as much as it wounds." Hastings, watching from the sidelines, marveled at Poirot's ability to weave resolution into reflection. The little Belgian's words were not merely a summation, but a guide for the future, delivered with the elegance of a philosopher. Poirot continued, his voice taking on the meditative tone. "The little gray cells, they see what the heart conceals. Madame Beatrice's deception was born of love, but love, it must be tempered with trust. The sapphire yacht became a stage for fear, but now it is a stage for renewal. You, each of you, have faced your shadows. What you do with the light, that is your choice." The steward, Jenkins, hovering near the door, spoke up, his voice hesitant. "Monsieur Poirot, I saw things. Mr. Langston, the bundle, but I didn't speak sooner. I was afraid. Will you forgive me?" Poirot's gaze was kind. "Monsieur Jenkins, fear, it silences many. But you spoke when it mattered. That is enough." The lunch continued in near silence, the guests lost in their thoughts. As they dispersed, Poirot and Hastings moved to the upper deck, where the sea breeze carried the promise of a new day. Hastings, leaning against the railing, turned to his friend. "Poirot, you've done it again. Solved the puzzle and mended the hearts. But how do you know when to push and when to let go?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Mon ami, the heart and the mind, they must dance together. The little gray cells, they find the truth. But the heart, it decides what to do with it." Madame Beatrice's crime was not one of blood, but of fear. To punish her further would serve no purpose. The family, it must heal. Hastings nodded, his admiration for Poirot deepening.
You're a marvel, old chap. But what about Sir Reginald's venture? Will he abandon it? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. That, Hastings, is for him to...
The English Channel. The resolution of the mystery had brought a fragile peace to the vessel, but the air remained heavy with the weight of truths uncovered and relationships strained. Lady Beatrice's deception, though born of love, had left scars on the guests, and the question of what lay ahead lingered like the faint mist on the horizon. Hercule Poirot, his work of unraveling the staged crime complete, now turned his attention to the delicate task of guiding the aftermath. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing on the upper deck, watched the shoreline grow closer, his thoughts a tangle of admiration for Poirot's genius and concern for the fractured bonds among the passengers. The main salon, where the guests gathered for tea at 4:19 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, was a scene of quiet introspection. The room's opulence, its polished mahogany, crystal decanters, and soft velvet cushions, seemed almost incongruous against the somber mood. Sir Reginald Ashbourne sat at the head of the table, his broad frame less commanding, his eyes shadowed with the burden of his wife's actions. Lady Beatrice, her face pale and drawn, sipped her tea with mechanical precision, avoiding her husband's gaze. Eleanor Ashbourne, her auburn hair catching the light, sat close to her mother, her expression a mix of resolve and sorrow. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife, Clara, spoke in hushed tones, their faces etched with lingering guilt. Victor Langston, his sharp features softened by reflection, stirred his tea absently. Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's charm slowly resurfacing, offered a tentative smile to Eleanor, seeking to mend their strained connection. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret sat in their usual corner, Margaret's eyes sharp with observation, though her silence held the newfound warmth. Poirot entered the salon with his customary precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache a perfect curve. He declined tea, instead standing before the group, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant, "the Sapphire Yacht has borne us through a storm of deception, but we have reached calmer waters. The truth has been revealed. No murder, but a plot born of fear and love. Yet the reckoning, it is not only for the guilty, but for all who share this ship. We must face what lies ahead." The guests shifted, their eyes fixed on Poirot. Sir Reginald set down his cup, his voice gruff but measured. "Poirot, you've done us a service clearing this mess. But my family, we're broken. How do we move forward?" Poirot's gaze softened. "Monsieur, a family is not broken by a single act, even one of deceit. Madame Beatrice sought to protect you, though her path was misguided. The reckoning, it is in forgiveness, in What that venture would do to us. Can you ever forgive me? Eleanor reached for her mother's hand, her eyes glistening. Mother, I was angry, but I understand now. You did it for us. We'll find a way, together. Sir Reginald's jaw tightened, but his voice softened. It won't be easy, Beatrice. But you're my wife, and Eleanor's our daughter. We'll try. Poirot nodded, his eyes shifting to Dr. Caldwell. Monsieur le Docteur, your part in this was small but significant. The vial of blood, it fueled the deception. What is your reckoning? Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his face pale. I was wrong to help, Monsieur Poirot. I thought it was a harmless favor. I've promised Beatrice I'll make it right. No more secrets. Mrs. Caldwell, her voice steadying, added, We've learned our lesson, monsieur. We'll be honest, always. Poirot's smile was faint. Bon. Honesty. It is the foundation of trust. And you, Monsieur Langston?
Your name was used to sow suspicion. What do you carry from this?" Langston's eyes met Poirot's, his tone thoughtful.
"I was bitter about Reginald's deal, yes. But this, it's shown me there's more to life than profit. I'll let it go, Poirot."
Miss Sylvia Grey, her voice soft, spoke up. "Monsieur Poirot, I caused pain by speaking out of turn. I'll be more mindful, I promise, and I hope I can make amends with Beatrice and Eleanor." Poirot inclined his head. "Mademoiselle, your confession opened the path to truth. That is amends enough."
Colonel Hartley, his voice gruff, said, "You've a way of cutting through nonsense, Poirot. This whole affair, it's made us see what matters."
Margaret Hartley, her plain face alight with quiet resolve, added, "You've shown us our flaws, monsieur, but also our strength. Thank you." Poirot's expression was reflective. "Mes amis, the sapphire yacht has been a crucible, forging truth from deception. The blood, it was not shed in violence, but it spoke of fear. The cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, the tarpaulin, the notebook, they were the tools of a heart in turmoil. Yet you have faced this turmoil, and you are stronger for it." Hastings, watching from the sidelines, marveled at Poirot's ability to guide without judgment, to illuminate without condemning. The little Belgian's words were a bridge between past mistakes and future hopes, delivered with the grace of a sage. Poirot continued, his voice taking on a philosophical tone. "The little grey cells, they seek order, but the heart, it seeks meaning." Madame Beatrice's deception was a cry for protection, but it was also a lesson. Trust, it must be earned anew each day.
Sir Poirot's gaze was kind. "Monsieur Jenkins, courage, it grows with time. You spoke when it mattered. That is enough." The tea concluded, the guests dispersing to their cabins or the deck, their faces a mix of resolve and reflection. Poirot and Hastings moved to the stern, where the sea stretched endlessly before them, the shore now visible in the distance. Hastings, leaning against the railing, turned to his friend. "Poirot, you've not only solved the mystery, but given them a path forward. How do you do it? See so clearly into people's hearts?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Mon ami, the heart, it speaks in glances, in silences, in the smallest gestures. The little grey cells, they listen. Madame Beatrice's fear, Eleanor's loyalty, Sir Reginald's pride, they were all there, waiting to be seen. The reckoning, it is not mine to give, but theirs to embrace." Hastings nodded, his admiration deepening. "And the venture, do you think Sir Reginald will abandon it?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "That, Hastings, is a choice for him and his family. The truth has given them clarity. What they build with it is their own. As for us, the sapphire yacht has no more secrets to yield. London awaits, and with it, no doubt, another puzzle." The yacht sailed closer to shore, its passengers carrying the weight of lessons learned, and Poirot, ever the master, stood ready for the next challenge, his mind as sharp as the sea breeze that carried them home. Chapter 14. The Departure. The sapphire yacht neared the Devon coast, its sleek silhouette cutting through the late afternoon waters of the English Channel, the horizon now a promise of solid ground. The resolution of Lady Beatrice's deception had lifted the spectre of violence, but the emotional undercurrents aboard remained as turbulent as the sea could have been. The guests, bound by the shared ordeal, moved with a quiet resolve, their interactions marked by tentative steps toward reconciliation. Hercule Poirot, his task of unraveling the mystery complete, prepared to take his leave, his presence a lingering reminder of the truth's power to both wound and heal. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing on the upper deck, felt the weight of the journey's end, his admiration for Poirot's genius tempered by a sense of melancholy for the fractured bonds left in its wake.
The main salon, where the guests gathered for a final gathering at 5:48 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, was a scene of restrained civility. The room's elegance, its gleaming mahogany, sparkling crystal and soft velvet, stood in stark contrast to the subdued mood. Sir Reginald Ashbourne sat at the head of the table, his broad frame less imposing, his eyes reflecting a mix of fatigue and determination. Lady Beatrice, her face still pale but softened by a gentle smile, a bridge toward healing. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara sat close, their faces marked by quiet remorse. Victor Langston, his sharp features relaxed, sipped a glass of wine with a contemplative air. Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's charm fully restored, engaged Eleanor in soft conversation, her laughter a tentative note of renewal. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret occupied their usual corner, Margaret's eyes bright with a newfound openness. Poirot entered the salon with his customary precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his mustache a perfect curve. He declined a seat, instead standing before the group, his hands clasped behind his back. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "The Sapphire yacht has carried us through a storm of secrets, but we have reached the shore of truth. The deception is unmasked, the heart's motives laid bare. As we prepare to disembark, let us reflect on what we leave behind and what we take forward." The guests exchanged glances, their silence heavy with the weight of the past days. Sir Reginald cleared his throat, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Poirot, you've given us clarity where there was chaos. My family owes you a great deal. But the road ahead, it won't be easy." Poirot's gaze softened. "Monsieur, the road to healing, it is never easy. But it is possible. Madame Beatrice's actions, they were born of love, though misguided. Trust, it must be rebuilt, but the foundation remains, your family." Lady Beatrice's eyes glistened as she spoke. "Monsieur Poirot, I was wrong to deceive, to cause such fear. But your compassion, it's given us a chance to start anew. Thank you." Eleanor's voice was soft but firm. "We'll work through this, Mother, Father. Together, we'll be stronger." Poirot nodded, his eyes shifting to Dr. Caldwell. "Monsieur le Docteur, your role in the deception was small, but it carried weight. What will you carry from this?" Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his face earnest. "Honesty, Monsieur Poirot. I've learned the cost of secrets. I'll keep none from now on." Mrs. Caldwell, her voice steady, added, "We'll make it right, Maurice and I. No more favors that harm." Poirot's smile was faint. "Bon. The heart learns slowly, but it learns. And you, Monsieur Langston, you were a target of suspicion, yet you emerged unscathed. What do you take from this?" Langston's eyes met Poirot's, his tone thoughtful. "A lesson in perspective, Poirot. I let bitterness cloud my judgment. I'll focus on what matters, building, not destroy." Bad Margaret Hartley, her plain face alight with quiet resolve, spoke softly. "You've given us a mirror, monsieur. We've seen our flaws, but also our potential. That's a gift." Poirot inclined his head, his expression reflective. "Mes amis, the Sapphire yacht has been a stage, not for tragedy, but for truth. The blood, it was a deception, but it spoke of fear. The cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, the tarpaulin, the notebook, they were props in a play of the heart. Yet you have faced this play, and you are changed. The departure, it is not only from this yacht, but from the shadows you carried." Hastings, watching from the sidelines, marveled at Poirot's ability to weave resolution into reflection, his words a beacon for the guests' fractured spirits. The little Belgian's presence was a reminder that truth, though painful, could pave the way for renewal. Poirot continued, his voice taking on a philosophical tone. The little gray cells, they seek order, but the heart, it seeks connection. Madame Beatrice's fear drove her to deceive, but her love, it remains. The sapphire yacht has shown you the cost of secrets and the value of truth. As you step onto shore, carry this, honesty. It is the compass that guides you home. The steward, Jenkins, hovering near the door, spoke hesitantly. Monsieur Poirot, I was afraid to speak, but you showed me courage. I'll remember that. Poirot's gaze was kind. Monsieur Jenkins, courage, it is found in the smallest acts. You have begun, and that is enough. The gathering concluded, the guests dispersing to prepare for disembarkation. Poirot and Hastings moved to the stern, where the coastline was now a clear line of green and gray. Hastings, leaning against the railing, turned to his friend. Poirot, you've not only solved the mystery, but given them a way to heal. How do you balance justice with mercy? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Mon ami, justice, it is not always punishment. Sometimes it is understanding. The little gray cells, they find the truth, but the heart, it decides its use. Madame Beatrice's crime was of the heart, not of blood. To mend a family, that is the greater victory. Hastings nodded, his admiration deepening. And Sir Reginald's venture? Will he abandon it, do you think? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. That, Hastings, is for him to decide. The truth has given him clarity. The choice is his. As for us, the sapphire yacht has no more secrets to yield. London beckons, and with it, new mysteries. As the yacht approached the dock, its passengers stood ready to step onto shore, their hearts lighter, but their lessons heavy. Poirot, ever the master, prepared to depart, his mind already turning to the next challenge, his presence a quiet assurance that truth in all its
Pure as the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the English Channel. The ordeal of the past days had come to a close, with Lady Beatrice's deception unmasked and the truth laid bare by Hercule Poirot's relentless pursuit of order. The guests, their hearts and minds reshaped by the experience, prepared to disembark, carrying with them the lessons of truth and trust. Poirot, his work complete, stood ready to return to London, his presence a quiet testament to the power of reason over chaos. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the gangway, felt a bittersweet pang as he watched the shoreline, his admiration for Poirot's genius mingling with a sense of closure for the journey's end. The main deck, where the guests gathered for their final moments aboard at 6:32 p.m., as noted by the ship's clock, was a scene of quiet resolution. The yacht's elegance, its polished teak, gleaming brass and fluttering pennants, seemed to herald a return to normalcy, though the echoes of the mystery lingered. Sir Reginald Ashbourne stood near the railing, his broad frame steadier, his eyes reflecting a newfound resolve. Lady Beatrice, her face softened by contrition, stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, a gesture of tentative reconciliation. Eleanor Ashbourne, her auburn hair glowing in the sunlight, smiled at her parents, her presence a bridge between past wounds and future hopes. Dr. Maurice Caldwell and his wife Clara stood close, their faces marked by a quiet determination to move forward. Victor Langston, his sharp features softened by introspection, gazed out at the sea with a thoughtful air. Miss Sylvia Grey, her actress's charm fully restored, laughed softly with Eleanor, their friendship renewed. Colonel Rupert Hartley and his sister Margaret stood together, Margaret's eyes bright with a quiet strength that had emerged over the days. Poirot stepped onto the deck with his customary precision, his patent leather shoes gleaming, his moustache a perfect curve. He carried a small valise, his demeanor calm yet authoritative. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice clear and resonant. "The Sapphire Yacht has been our stage, and its drama. It is now complete. The truth has been revealed, the heart's secrets laid bare. As we part, let us carry the lessons of this journey, truth, trust, and the courage to face both." The guests turned to him, their faces a mix of gratitude and reflection. Sir Reginald stepped forward, his voice gruff but sincere. "Poirot, you've given us more than answers. You've given us a chance to rebuild. My family will be stronger for it. Thank you." Poirot inclined his head, his eyes softening. "Monsieur, a family is a treasure, fragile, yet enduring. You have faced—"
"I won't forget it," Eleanor, her hand still clasping her mother's, added. "You've helped us see what matters, monsieur. We'll hold on to that." Poirot's smile was faint but warm. "Mademoiselle, the heart, it learns through pain, but it grows through love. You and your family, you will find your way." He turned to Dr. Caldwell, his tone gentle but probing. "Monsieur le Docteur, your role in the deception was small, but it taught you the weight of truth. What will you carry from this?" Dr. Caldwell adjusted his glasses, his voice steady. "Honesty, Monsieur Poirot. I'll keep no secrets, and I'll help others do the same." Mrs. Caldwell, her eyes bright with resolve, added, "We've learned the cost of silence, monsieur. We'll speak up." "Always," Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Victor Langston. "Monsieur Langston, you were a shadow in this drama, suspected yet innocent. What do you take from the Sapphire Yacht?" Langston's eyes met Poirot's, his tone thoughtful. "A reminder, Poirot, that bitterness blinds. I'll focus on what builds, not what tears down." Miss Sylvia Gray, her voice warm, said, "Monsieur Poirot, you saw through my mistakes and gave me a chance to make amends. I'll be wiser, and I'll cherish the friendships I've kept." Colonel Hartley, his voice gruff, added, "You're a rare man, Poirot. You've shown us our weaknesses, but also our strength." Margaret Hartley, her plain face alight with quiet admiration, spoke softly. "You've given us clarity, monsieur. We leave this yacht better than we came." Poirot's expression was reflective, his voice taking on a philosophical tone. "Mes amis, the Sapphire Yacht has been a mirror, reflecting the heart's complexities. The blood, it was a deception, but it spoke of fear. The cufflink, the handkerchief, the knife, the tarpaulin, the notebook, they were the props of a desperate act. Yet you have faced this act, and you have grown. The final farewell, it is not to the yacht, but to the shadows you leave behind." Hastings, standing near the gangway, marveled at Poirot's ability to weave resolution into reflection, his words a guiding light for the guests' future paths. The little Belgian's presence was a quiet assurance that truth, though painful, could lead to renewal. Poirot continued, his voice resonant with wisdom. "The little gray cells, they seek order, but the heart, it seeks meaning. Madame Beatrice's deception was a cry for protection, but it was also a lesson in trust. The Sapphire Yacht has shown you the cost of secrets and the power of truth. As you step onto shore, carry this. The heart, it heals when it is honest." The steward, Jenkins, approached, his face earnest. "Monsieur Poirot."
Flourish. The guests began to disembark, their luggage carried by the crew, their steps lighter, but their hearts heavy with lessons learned. Poirot and Hastings lingered on the deck, the sea breeze cool against their faces. Hastings turned to his friend, his voice tinged with admiration. "Poirot, you've not only solved the mystery but given them a way to move forward. How do you always find the balance between truth and compassion?" Poirot's eyes twinkled, his smile enigmatic. "Mon ami, the little grey cells,
They find the truth, but the heart, it decides its use. Madame Beatrice's crime was of fear, not malice. To heal a family, that is the greater triumph. The sapphire yacht has taught us this. Truth, it is the compass, but love, it is the destination. Hastings nodded, his admiration deepening. And Sir Reginald's venture? Do you think he'll abandon it? Poirot's gaze drifted to the horizon. That, Hastings, is for him to decide. The truth has given him clarity. The choice is his own. As for us, London awaits, with its quiet streets and, no doubt, another puzzle to solve. As the last guests stepped onto the pier, the sapphire yacht stood silent, its secrets laid bare. Poirot, ever the master, descended the gangway with Hastings, his valise in hand, his mind already turning to the next challenge. The sea stretched endlessly behind them, a reminder of the mysteries they had conquered, and the truth that would always guide their way.